Most of the strains people talk about are famous for getting you really high, or tasting amazing, or looking incredible. But this one is different. This is a strain that was specifically bred to not get you high at all. And yet, it might be the single most important strain in modern history because it helped change cannabis laws across the entire country, and it started with a desperately sick little girl named Charlotte. This is the story of Charlotte's Web, the CBD strain that changed everything. And just so you know going in, this story has a sad ending because Charlotte sadly passed away in 2020, but her impact on the world is enormous. So let's tell it right. So it starts back in 2006 in Colorado with the birth of a baby girl named Charlotte Figi. When she was just 3 months old, she had her first seizure, and things only got worse from there. She was eventually diagnosed with a rare and severe form of childhood epilepsy called Dravet syndrome, usually caused by a mutation in the SCN1A gene. This is a brutal condition. It causes constant, violent seizures, and it barely responds to normal medicine. So sadly, her situation was about as bad as it gets. By the time she was around 5 years old, Charlotte was having as many as 300 seizures a week. Let that sink in for a second. 300. She was in a wheelchair. She had basically stopped walking, talking, and eating, and her heart had stopped multiple times. Her doctors had run out of options. They'd tried everything, including standard first-line treatments like stiripentol, and nothing worked. The family had genuinely reached the end of the road. So in complete desperation, her parents, Matt and Paige, started looking into something almost nobody was talking about for a child back then: cannabis. Specifically, a special type of cannabis that was high in a compound called CBD and very low in THC. And Paige, who had actually voted against marijuana in the past, was willing to try anything at this point to save her daughter. Now let's pause and explain the science here, because this is the key to the whole story. Regular weed, the kind people smoke to get high, is loaded with THC. THC is the compound that gets you stoned, that alters your mind. But the cannabis plant has another major compound in it called CBD. And CBD is completely different. It does not get you high at all. It's not intoxicating. But some research was starting to suggest that CBD might have the power to calm seizures. So the idea was to find a plant packed with the helpful CBD, but with almost none of the mind-altering THC, which you definitely don't want to be giving to a small child. So the search for that exact kind of plant led the Figi family to 6 brothers in Colorado, the Stanley Brothers. They were cannabis growers, and they had actually created a strain that was very high in CBD and very low in THC. And there's a funny detail here. Because that strain didn't get you high, recreational users had no interest in it. It was useless to people just trying to get stoned. So the brothers had jokingly nicknamed it hippie's disappointment, because any hippie hoping to get high off it would be sorely disappointed. But for a sick child, that so-called disappointment was exactly what they needed. So the family got some of this low-THC, high-CBD oil made from that strain, and they gave Charlotte her first dose in 2012. And what reportedly happened next is the reason this whole story exists. That first dose, according to her family, stopped her seizures for 7 straight days. 7 days when she'd been having hundreds a week. And over the following months, her seizures dropped dramatically, reportedly down to just a few a month. She started to walk, talk, and eat again. So in honor of the little girl whose life it changed, the Stanley Brothers renamed their strain. They called it Charlotte's Web. Now I do have to be really honest and careful here, because this is important. Charlotte's story is a single, powerful case. It's what scientists call anecdotal, meaning it's one family's experience, not a controlled scientific study. And CBD is not a magic cure-all for everything. which is a claim you'll see all over the internet. It didn't even completely cure Charlotte. Her own father was always clear that it wasn't a cure. It just gave her a massively better quality of life and far fewer seizures. So the honest framing is that this was one incredible, real result for one child, but at that point it was not yet hard science. But even as one story, it was about to explode across the entire world. And that's because of a documentary. In 2013, a famous doctor and news correspondent named Dr. Sanjay Gupta released a CNN documentary simply called Weed. And Gupta doing it was a huge deal, because he had actually been against medical marijuana before. But after looking into it, he publicly changed his mind and even apologized for being wrong. And his documentary featured Charlotte's story. It showed the world this little girl and her incredible turnaround. And that broadcast changed everything overnight. Because suddenly, millions of people who thought all marijuana was just a dangerous drug saw a completely different side of it. They saw a medicine that could potentially help a suffering child without getting her high. The public's opinion started shifting in a massive way. Charlotte's story became a national conversation. It also had an immediate, real-world effect. Families who had epileptic children, especially kids with the same condition as Charlotte, started packing up their entire lives and moving to Colorado just to get access to this oil. They became known as medical refugees. Parents left their jobs, their homes, and their families behind, moving across the country for a chance at the same result Charlotte got. That's how desperate and how hopeful people were. But now we get to the part that gives this video its title. Because this wave of emotion and attention started to actually change the laws. And it hit differently than normal marijuana legalization. See, a lot of very conservative states that would never dream of legalizing weed for getting high looked at Charlotte's story differently. This wasn't about getting stoned. This was about sick kids and a non-intoxicating medicine. It was politically much easier to support. So starting around 2014, state after state began passing what were called CBD-only laws. These were limited laws that specifically allowed the high-CBD, low-THC products, often for treating epilepsy. And many of them were literally named after sick children, and some were straight up nicknamed after Charlotte's Web itself. Cannabis, in a very limited form, was suddenly becoming legal in places nobody expected. Now, I'll be honest about these laws too, because a lot of them were more symbolic than practical. Many of them allowed you to possess the oil, but didn't actually give you a legal way to buy it in the state, which forced parents to break federal law by carrying it across state lines. So they were a first step, an important one, but they were often messy and incomplete. But either way, that momentum kept building towards something much bigger. All of this attention on CBD and hemp fed into a massive federal change. In 2018, the government passed a farm bill that federally legalized hemp, which is basically cannabis defined as having less than 0.3% THC. And by legalizing hemp, they effectively legalized CBD taken from that hemp across the entire country. That is a gigantic deal. It's the reason you now see CBD products in gas stations, pharmacies, and grocery stores everywhere. And the road to that moment runs directly through Charlotte's story. And on the science side, the proof eventually caught up to the anecdote, at least for certain conditions. In that same year, 2018, the FDA officially approved Epidiolex, an actual CBD-based medicine developed by GW Pharmaceuticals for treating a couple of rare, severe forms of epilepsy, including Dravet syndrome and Lennox-Gastaut syndrome. This was backed by real, rigorous clinical trials. So the core idea at the heart of Charlotte's story, that CBD can genuinely reduce seizures for these specific conditions, went from a hopeful anecdote to scientifically proven medicine. But I want to be precise. That proof is for those specific rare epilepsy conditions, It does not mean CBD is proven to cure everything people claim, and it's smart to stay skeptical of the wilder health claims out there. But with that being said, it still leaves us with the question, what happened to the Stanley Brothers and their strain? Well, the honest answer is, they built it into a major business. Charlotte's Web became one of the biggest CBD companies in the entire country, and it eventually became a publicly traded company on the stock market. They basically helped kick off a multi-billion-dollar CBD industry that popped up almost out of nowhere. Now, that industry has had its ups and downs, and the company has faced its share of struggles as the CBD market got flooded and cooled off. But there's no question they turned one strain into the foundation of a whole new market. And through all of it, the family kept up the mission. They helped create the Realm of Caring Foundation, a nonprofit to get this oil to other families who couldn't afford it or access it, so that Charlotte's result could help as many other kids as possible. It was never just about the money for the people at the heart of it. It was about the kids. So let's come back to Charlotte herself, because she's the soul of this whole story. And be warned, this is sensitive and sad. Tragically, I am saddened to report that in April of 2020, Charlotte passed away at just 13 years old, after an illness that led to complications from a seizure. Shortly after that heartbreaking news, the state of Colorado officially declared April 7th Charlotte Figi Day in her honor. Dr. Gupta, the man whose documentary changed everything, wrote that she was the little girl who changed the world. And he was right. So, at the end of the day, Charlotte's Web is proof that the most powerful strain in the world doesn't have to be the strongest one. It's a plant bred to do the opposite of getting you high. That started as a joke called Hippie's Disappointment and became a symbol of hope for desperate families. Because of one little girl and the plant named after her, laws changed in dozens of states, an entire industry was born, and the way the world sees this plant shifted forever. It's a reminder of something simple. It's a reminder that sometimes the most important thing cannabis can do has nothing to do with getting high at all. So what do you think? Did you know that one little girl and one strain were behind the entire CBD movement you see everywhere today? Let me know down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this one, do me a favor and hit that like button. Subscribe for more deep dives like this one, and I'll catch y'all in the next one.